one have emails, Mr. Jason, you have one, so everybody gets these?
Yes, sir. Ahead of time, yes, sir.
Okay. So they should be read, I'll make a motion to start the meeting.
Second.
I did not hear who made the second, I'm sorry.
Dwayne.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Motion and second, any discussion regarding the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. Move on to the financial report.
Mr. Owen, would you like to call the order? Or just- Sure.
I believe that we accept the financials as presented.
I'll second.
On a motion and second, any discussion or questions concerning the financial report? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Motion carries. Turn it over to Mr. Copeland.
All right. I want to thank y'all for working with me again for the second month in a row on the scheduled meeting. As you're aware, tomorrow, which will be our normal meeting, I'll be going out of town for the spring workshop with GEDA. So again, thank you for rearranging your schedules to accommodate. First item, let's talk about the water main real quick. As you're aware, we did have another pretty bad incident, this time with Fram. And I know Bo, people were kind of scared that it might have been Pallet 1 and Thompson Hardwoods again with all the fire trucks that were going down to your area instead of trying to get back to Fram. But that incident has certainly put some things into perspective and priority with our local governments and with the industry as well. The county right now, their commitment to try and get the road bed done for us and everything, so the water main can be put in. The county's resources, just we've got to take care of our taxpayers, first. So the county is actually stepping away from the job. The industry Fram has hired Joey Hires to go ahead and finish out the road bed work, the dirt work for us. And as you can see from picture A and picture B, they've completed a lot of dirt work. So as of the return from Memorial Day weekend, Glenn Williams, who's over the work department with the city, he'll be able to go in probably a day or two after Memorial Day, and he'll be able to begin laying that water line. It shouldn't take him more than a couple of days to get the line in. I went down there earlier today and yesterday, and I believe what we're seeing out there right now is the guys who did the bore and jack work, they're actually welding on the extension to finish out the length that they've got to get over into the road bed so that Blaine can do his work.
So by next week, Blaine should have no problem booking
He should have no problem getting started.
both sides.
Both sides. The picture A is actually from the industry side, and it looks like that all the way around to where the pavement ends that they already did, the frame already paved themselves. So they've got the road bed done.
This is industry side.
That's industry side. So they did the road bed in a matter of just a few days. Whereas, you know, on our side of the railroad tracks, because we have limited resources with the county and we got to take care of the whole county, it just made sense for us to go ahead and let Fram hire a contractor to finish out the work and help us out with that. So we'll have water to Fram very, very soon. And it's a shame we didn't have it done in time for what happened out there, because at that point they had no fire suppression. We had 11 fire departments to show up and assist with that incident out there a couple weeks ago. Let's see, let's talk about the grants real quick. We've actually are on the verge of getting some funding from our grants. We have, with the EDA grant, Carla is working with the Heart of Georgia Regional Commission Office, Katie, trying to clear up one item, which is basically a survey of the rail spur itself, because we have to do a separate lease on that to Fram. Katie and Carla have been in communication, and we just need to get a survey done, and that'll clear that condition, and we'll actually get our reimbursements through the EDA grant. The EIP and the One Georgia, we're going to have to do the same thing for those as well. So that one condition for EDA will also apply to the EIP and the One Georgia. And we got a couple other little things that are just inherently taking care of themselves as far as conditions to clear. Soon thereafter, we'll start getting funding from those as well. So we're in a really good spot on our funds from the grants. As you can see on that last picture there, we have what looks a lot like the railroad, the spur, and I've confirmed this with Hires, and I've also confirmed it with John Stover from Carter and Sloop, that the rail spur should be complete by the end of this month, if not the first week of June. And then we'll be good to go. I intentionally wanted to keep this kind of short on my behalf today, because we do have a special guest in the audience, Ben McKay from, well, actually, before we go into that, does anybody have any questions about what I've talked to you about so far?
Have you heard anything about the guys that got burnt the other day?
From what I've heard, and actually, Rhonda, I think you can help me out with this, both of the guys are now home.
Good.
I know one of them's home, the Miles, Chad's
Okay.
home.
He's
I
the
have
one
not heard
that does-
anything on the other guy.
I talked with Chad's brother on Friday, and he said he's doing fine. They don't expect any kind of permanent disability or anything. I mean, he's burned up, but
Yeah.
he's home. He's doing good.
Well, if he's home, the other one must be home, because Chad got the worst of it.
Yes.
If you wonder what we're talking about there, Fram had a bad incident a couple weeks ago where apparently, and this is unofficial, a cooling unit either exploded or had a flash fire. Chad and one other guy was actually on the platforms of the cooling unit itself when the incident happened, so they got burnt pretty bad. There were two other guys that were actually on the floor, not immediately on the platforms. They got singe burns, but they were treated locally and were home that night. Fortunately, it thank God it wasn't, but it could have been a whole lot worse from what determined in conversation with some of the Beasley group. But I haven't heard officially as to what made it happen. And it's a good thing, you know, thank God it wasn't worse than what it was. There could have been a lot more people hurt. So if y'all don't have any other questions about what we've talked about so far, Ben's going to talk to you about the target industry analysis.
Do we need to do a motion to pay somebody to do a survey? You saw that email, Carl.
Right.
Or consensus that we pay someone local to do a survey to finish up our grant funds?
We used True Point Surveying for the road, since we had to get a survey done over there. If y'all will, if y'all go ahead and vote on that, to go ahead and pay True Point, I'll just go ahead and go back to True Point Surveying since he's familiar with the project.
Yeah, he's got importance.
And Carl has already seen other information. If y'all will, permit me to hire True Point Surveying to actually do the survey for Railspur so we can clear those conditions.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Motion carries.
All right, good deal. All right, Ben,
Yes.
if you would, go ahead and introduce yourself. I've been looking forward to this day.
So have I.
Just so you know, we've got some representation in the room. Bo Reese is from Pallet One.
Okay.
We've got Ashley Googe from McPherson Manufacturing. I've got Kurt and Clint. They don't share a common last name, but they're all from Propex. You've met those gentlemen as well. And I couldn't help to think it was necessary for us to invite some of those that you took a look at so they could hear the results of what we're trying to do to complement our industries rather than attract anybody that would compete with our industries. So,
Well, absolutely. I think that was one of the most interesting parts of our analysis from the analyst perspective, was not only being able to go through the data side of it, but to also be able to see the operations that are here from McPherson and from Propex, and to be able to really get a good sense of what it's like on the ground to operate, and not just from a data perspective. So just a real quick, I'm gonna, since I'm asked to introduce myself, I'll do a quick one. I've been with Georgia Southern for about 8 years now. Done all kinds of industry analysis, market analysis, and economic impact analysis, a lot of the stuff. I work for the College of Business. Business Innovation Group is what we're now calling ourselves, which is part of the Genie program, the Bureau of Business Research and Economic Development, the Innovation Incubator, the Digital Fabrication Lab, and the Small Business Development Center are all housed at our office downtown in Statesboro. And we are the hub for business development services offered by the College of Business and in many cases by the university itself. So we are attempting to become a one-stop shop for Southeast Georgia. Yes, it does work better when I don't trip over a stop shop, but that's that point. And kind of be able to bring people in from both business and from business industry and from government, to be able to kind of all work together in one cohesive unit to move South Georgia forward in a positive way. And so we hope that this target industry analysis will fit that bill, and I think we've really done a good job. If I can toot my own horn on it for a second. But also like to thank our research team, my graduate assistant, Ian Chapan. He worked with me on this project and was a big asset to it. And I wanted to take a second to thank him, even though he's unable to be with us because he's got class today at 5. So, but at any rate, I wanted to thank him for his efforts and taking them to recognize him. So a big thing that I want to kind of go through, and everybody can kind of see you have in front of you the report itself, which is the most interesting thing that you'll read all week, I guarantee it. If you would prefer the condensed version, there is the PowerPoint, which is the second target industry analysis, which is dated today, is the executive highlights that kind of bring you through what it is that we did on it. So realistically, you might be asking yourself initially, what is a target industry analysis? So basically what our goal is to determine the industries with potential to expand or to be attracted to this area. A big thing that I will, and so what I hope the Development Authority is going to use it for, and Ilya and folks are going to kind of take a look at this, this is going to be our data guide to be able to make decisions, because we all know that time and financial resources are limited. That's one of our biggest constraints when we do anything at all, anywhere, ever, is how much time and how much it's going to cost us. Well, this is supposed to cut through the clutter for those types of things. So it's going to give Ilya something more to focus on and some methodology behind what he's focusing on. I'm sure that when something that's not on this list comes in, he's certainly going to say yes. But I'm also sure that this will be kind of the guide when we go out and start recruiting and doing those types of things. Secondary goal, and this is the one that I would really like to highlight for you guys this afternoon. One of the things that I was thinking about in the van on the way over here, and I thought about it a lot over the last couple of days, that absolutely drives me nuts when I go into a community for the first time, is I hear, we have no industry. We have no industry, nothing good has ever happened here. You know, we're dying, all this other stuff. Well, I am here to report to you all today that that is not the case in Hazelhurst and Jeff Davis. There are industries here, they are growing industries, they are developing industries, they have challenges that are facing businesses across the country, across the state, that need to be addressed and taken care of. But on the other hand, there are industries here. When you're out at the pool party this summer, or you're at the graduation parties, or wherever it is, use the data that's in here, that when we are highlighting the industry, share those with the people of this community so they have a better understanding that, yes, we stack up well in certain areas against the national average. And I'll get to that part in a minute. So we can really highlight some of those positiveness, so we can get that good word of mouth developing and get folks feeling good about what's going on here, because there is a lot to be positive about. That's my rah-rah speech for this part. At any rate, I joke about it, but I do sincerely believe that there are some big positives going on here, and that they need to be shared with the community at large. So how do we go about this? Well, in addition to our meeting with local stakeholders and those other things and those other folks, we looked we use the North American Industrial Classification System. So if a particular business is not listed on here, that's done intentionally. We went ahead and did that. So the NAICS codes are set up by the federal government as a way to track business activity through there. They came out of NAFTA. They replaced the old standard industrial classification system codes. I've got about a 20-minute speech that goes through the development of those. I'll skip that for everyone today, but if you would like more information on that, I would be happy to provide it. Basically, the big thing to keep in mind is that a 2-digit NAICS code is the broadest industry that we can find. A 6-digit is the most specific that we can get to. We looked at both 6-digit, we looked at 2-digit, we looked at 4-digit. We really tried to break this down in a number of different ways to really get a good sense of what's going on in the community. So when we talk about the 2,000, so we looked at over 2,000 NAICS codes for the for Jeff Davis County and contiguous. I won't list off the contiguous because I'm sure everybody has a general idea of what those are at this point. Plus, they're right in front of you, and all of that. So once we went through those factors, we began to say, okay, well, how do we break this down in a way that makes sense for the report? And so what we did is we performed a location quotient and a shift share analysis on the data for both the region and the county as a whole. The shift share analysis is the one that I think really kind of tells an interesting story. So basically, with a shift share analysis, your goal is to be at 1 or higher. If you're at 1, you're at par with the target area in terms of employment. So a shift share of 1 would mean that as a proportion of the employment in the area, you stack up well against the United States, because that was our target industry or target comparison that we used. Anything above that means you're outperforming the US economy in terms of proportion of employment in that sector. Anything below that, you've got some work to do to catch up in that, area. It kind of provides a very interesting story. I'll go through some of the data here in a few minutes to kind of highlight out that, but it's kind of the other one. The shift share analysis allows us to do a little bit, allows us to go inside that. So it's possible with the, it's a limitation of the location quotient, that you can have a proportion of employment that is virtually meaningless in a practical sense. So to account for that, and what I guess what I mean by that is if you have an agricultural, let me explain that for a second. If you have say you're in the agriculture sector, there are 10 employees in the entire system that we're looking at. 5 are in agriculture, that means that you have a 50% share. That is an incredibly high share. Nationally, you'd have a shift share that would be out of the roof. Or you'd have a location quotient that would be out of the roof. But in the sector itself, you only have 5 employees, so what good is that doing anybody? So in order to kind of account for that, we also performed a shift share analysis. And that takes into account the movement of both what demand is in the local region, what demand is at the industry, for the industry itself, and what demand is at the national level. And that allows us to kind of pull all of those together, and these two calculations form the real basis for what we kind of based a lot of our analysis on. For the county itself, we looked at 2,000. We looked at 1,000 of the NAICS codes, and then really what we found, and this is the part that definitely needs to be shared and sung about, is the manufacturing industry in this community is performing very well. It's doing great things for the region. There's a high proportion of analysis, shift shares, location quotients, everything. Every time we looked at it, the particular sectors inside it are performing well. So this is one of our big leaders. Another one is agriculture. Agriculture is another driver. The difficulty with agriculture is, of course, very few employees out of that, so we took that into account as well. Wholesale trade, so those are your one step above retail, essentially. So it's not the distribution, but it's the processing of the chicken in the plant. Once it comes out, sits in a freezer, then it moves on from there. That's kind of where we get the wholesale trade, and then of course transportation and warehousing, which I'll get to in a second to kind of break that down a little bit, because it's both one of our recommendations in the strong area, and it's one that requires a little bit more emphasis. I'll get to that, and I have more specific information on all of those. So I've walked you through a little bit of the data that we used. Be happy to take any questions as we go through this, now that I've gotten out that stuff, because I know I can kind of get excited about this, and so that's good, but on the other hand, that means I talk faster, and all those kinds of things. So please don't hesitate to ask questions, particularly through this part, to make sure that I'm not missing the mark here. Excuse me. So I'll lay out a little bit of our selection criteria for everybody as we kind of went through this. We had if you had 40 or more employees in your sector, that was one of the things that would trigger us to take a second look. They had potential for expansion and retention. That's a big one for us. That was one where we kicked out, and I don't mean to make fun of our friends in retail, but we kicked out retail, we kicked out civic organizations, we kicked out churches, because those are a totally different bag from what we're trying to do with this analysis and with the development authority and those other things. So this only includes what I would call big industries, or industries that are going to have a long lead time to put together, but once they come, they're going to bring hundreds of jobs, if not thousands. It's kind of our methodology at that point. You have to have a location quotient above 1, which is always good, and then you have to have a strong or neutral competitive effects within that. And then we used kind of we kind of did a little bit of picking and choosing between those because we were really concerned that we didn't miss anything in this analysis. So you have to have at least 2 of those to qualify to move forward. In the way we did this. So, as you can tell, what's before you now on page 7, you can kind of see a number of the folks that I believe would be covered by these industries are in the room with us today, and that is nice. But you know, row crops, logging for agriculture, and then sawmills, and wood pallet manufacture, and broadly woven cloth are some of the big some of the big ones that we've seen. I won't read off the whole list, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. But I wanted this to be kind of out there because once we get down, these are 6-digit level NAICS descriptions, which is why they're both a little wordy because they're written in federal governmentese, which we all know is a totally different language than what you or I or anybody else would speak. But they're in those, so they would be directly relatable to the 6-digit level. And you can see on page 8 where these industries ranked up in terms of both jobs and in terms of location quotient change between 2009 and 2014. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to go through parts of this chart, but again, I don't feel like it's effective for me to stand here and go through the chart. Other than to maybe point out the location quotients, that's those types of things that we see there.
Ben, the information that you use and compile to make these determinations, how far out is that lag of information? And the last most updated information you're able to use is that 2013. I see you got 2009 to 2014. From what my understanding of the community is in the sawmills and pallet manufacturing and all that, we're actually increased in production and employment in this area. So the information that you're using, how up to date is that information? 1 year out, or?
It's about a year. It's a give or take a 6 month to a year lag depending on which one it is. We used a private company to pull together some of the data. MZ is their name. It's Economic Modeling System Incorporated or something like that. And they pulled a lot of this together. They do projections. The 2014 are projected figures. I can almost guarantee it. But I wanted to make sure that we included that in here because it kind of a lot of people don't like to see the hard numbers are with the year lag. It's really more like really about a year and 6 months lag because it takes them so long to calculate everything out and get it into the lines. So yeah, there probably are some discrepancies there to what's actually going on the ground versus what is there, but I think the story would generally stay the same. And if it gets even more positive, then that's great. Then we know we're even more right than we were before. Because we know the 2014 projections are wrong.
How did Appleton County pellets play into this? Was it even brought in?
We looked at Appleton County. We did look at the Appleton County pellet industry as part of it. As part of it, I believe that really that did increase the overall location quotient for the region. And then when we kind of boiled it down, we saw that there was a decline. There was a decline in location quotient between Jeff Davis and Appleton in our system, but it just kind of continued to tell the same. I didn't focus on it too much because it continued to tell the same story, that the wood products is a big deal for this area. And we have both the inputs and the outputs. So we could theoretically start from tree and go all the way from tree to wood pellet, or tree to pallet, or tree to I'll give it away right now. Tree to window, to window, which is one of our suggestions in here. So,
Do you remember what the farm, garden, machinery, equipment merchant wholesalers, who fell in that category?
I don't remember that off the top, I don't remember that off the top of my head. I would suspect, pull back up again real quick here. I would suspect that those are your, distributors of equipment in that range.
Is this for all the counties that touch Jeff Davis or just Jeff Davis?
It's just Jeff Davis.
Oh, it's just Jeff Davis. But I'm assuming y'all work on the golf cart stuff. McPherson, whatever company that is that does that, that would fall in some of that. I just didn't think it would, didn't know we had 100 jobs.
McPherson's a little bit of a tricky beast from a
They do
data
too much.
perspective.
Too many different things.
They
Change.
They are-
Well, that y'all do a lot.
That's the-
Diversified.
it is an incredibly interesting thing, and for what I can't say enough positive about the company generally speaking, but from a data perspective, they drive me nuts because they're all held under the management of companies and enterprises, NAICS. So to really get into specifics about what of this actually covers what Ashley would be doing over there, I was struggling with that one because I wanted to make sure that they were in here and they were classified as management of companies, and there's nothing I can do once they're classified that way. Other than just throw my hands up in the air and hope for the best. So since we're talking about golf, I grab a 5-iron and just take a shot at it. See what happens. So I guess that would be the other thing. I caution anybody to try and, we did have wonderful discussions with the industries, and it really did help form our analysis. But to really try and cherry pick who's who in this, it's a little bit more difficult than just saying, yes, this is somebody else and this is that and all of that. So as we Any other questions before I?
You're saying that if you got a location quotient above 1, that technically you're strong as compared, right?
Yes, you're beating, our comparison region was the United States, so you're beating the U.S. economy in all of those areas in terms of proportional employment.
Who is the furniture person? Two furniture stores in town.
Yeah, this is wholesale, so they're retail.
Mhm.
Okay.
Who's the wholesaler in furniture that you found?
I didn't look too close at it, to be honest. That was one that I kind of noticed. I used to, long before I started at the center, I worked in the furniture industry. It's one of those industries that I have a passion, I wouldn't say passion for, but I have an interest in. And when I saw the furniture industry pop up there, I wanted to stay away from that as much as possible because there are so many foreign imports that come through that, and it's so much price-based that unless you have a boutique manufacturer who's going through that, it's a hard road to go after.
No, North Carolina is not the big furniture hub in the world anymore.
No.
No way we'll be able to compete in that market anymore.
Yeah, when I was doing that, there was the introduction of Chinese memory foam. So there was nothing more frustrating than when you're trying to sell a $2,000 mattress to a customer, and they're like, but I can get the same thing for $500, and I'm like, yeah, but that $500 mattress got on a boat somewhere in Shanghai and came all the way across the world. You really trust what you're sleeping on at that point. And I was concerned that from a development authority perspective, that would be a difficult sell to make to to do it. I can point to some smaller manufacturers that are actually in other Genie counties that are making a go of it, but they're doing high-end stuff, solid wood, those types of things, no press board allowed. So a big part of our, another larger part of our analysis that I'm going to highlight as well is that once we got the list together, we had a good sense of what was required or what the industry or what the data was telling us. We wanted to make sure that our support industries, which is one of the big things that we use to make sure, there was actually something worthwhile. Because we were able to go all the way down from the $1 million level to the $5 level. So we put a stop in at 40,000. Obviously, that's not enough for any of the businesses in this room to truly make money at. But on the other hand, we needed to stop it somewhere. So we stopped it as low down the list as we thought was reasonable to begin to make any kind of a case whatsoever. And we picked the 40,000 as kind of the base. The report has a numerous detail in the data appendix about what is there and all of those types of things. But so when we look at the chart on page 9, what you'll see is the number of industries that have in our sample that supported the core of the businesses here. So.
Yeah, let me ask you a clarification question. I'm not sure I understand that. So 40 million is the support level, 40,000. What does that mean then?
That means that local demand for that particular good or service is at $40,000 or above. So based on all of this information that we had pulled together, that's where we got down to what you see on page 11. What you see on page 11 here, which is the target sectors that we identified. Each one of these, it is our belief, will not compete against an already existing business manufacturing firm, anybody in this particular region. Every industry is purchasing something from these industries, whether it's a lot or a little. There'll be some data in the presentation that'll kind of go through that. But one of the big ones we noticed was plastic materials and resins. We'd like to see another one of those manufacturers here, or somebody doing that. There's already a lot in the plastics industry here. We thought it would be a good fit. And then the other one that I'd really like to highlight is the windows and doors. That was a big one because we know as you get it, depending on how that process develops, there's a lot of opportunities there, both in manufactured homes, in actual homes, in trailers, to have that. There's enough in the industry, there's enough local demand for those aspects according to our models that there would be an opportunity to be able to pitch it to a business that, hey, you could locate here, you already got some people that are interested in purchasing, and then you continue to sell it. I want to be ultra clear on this point. None of these support industries could operate by only supplying Jeff Davis businesses. They're going to have to operate like everybody else in this room by selling products outside of this region. The goal is, or my hope is that we can use those as a springboard to say, look, you want to take a second look at us because we have $1 million in untapped potential that's already here. Folks that might be interested in purchasing. We've got other assets that have been with the port and the nice road access and these other issues that are already here to be able to do that. One point of concern and one reason why it's in here twice, I want to make sure I hit on that as well, is the transportation and warehousing. I noticed a lot of shifts and declines and change in that industry, mostly to the negative side. And it's one that I wanted to make sure to highlight. Not that the firms in the area are doing a bad job, but that from a general perspective, if we can't move products to market, that's gonna be a really big challenge going forward for any of the manufacturers in this room, or for the community as a whole, to be able to say that we are a manufacturing hub and that we can do these things if we can't move our products. So that would be the one area where I would caution to keep a close watch on those firms and making sure that we have the access to the transportation that's required to get product to market.
Isn't that a nationwide concern? How do we stack up nationwide? Because I know that the trucking industry during the Depression, there's a lot of companies that went under and now trying to restaff those companies and put trucks back on the road. I think it's starting to get better.
It is starting to
I think it's a nationwide problem.
You stack up very well against the nation. In the data that we looked at, we didn't see that firms were going out of business. We saw that firms were contracting along with the rest of the industry. That's a good sign. But it's also an area where if we're going to say that we want to attract these other industries here that are going to partake in manufacturing and are going to use the labor force to do those other types of things that are here, we have to be mindful of resource constraint. And one of the resource constraints that is possible in the future is local trucking. And it's a concern that I had as an analyst, and I wanted to bring it forth to the board to say that's something that you all might want to keep an eye on. And so in order to keep us from going too far in the weeds, I went ahead and put in a couple of charts here at the very back of the presentation where we look at both the regional support levels and the others that you can kind of see how much money we're actually talking about, what's the regional support level that's currently here, what's the percentage that's being spent out of the region, and then how many industries are we supporting given our ideas that we have here. So one of the reasons why I hit the plastics so hard is that plastic resin manufacturers is at 2.1 million for the region. None of it's being purchased here, and all of it is being purchased elsewhere, and it would support 3 industries. So there is potential there.
Ben, let me ask you
Sure.
a question real quick. The plastics that Propex purchases, is that manufactured internally under the big umbrella? Or do y'all actually purchase that from outside of the Propex entity?
No, it's a purchase outside. It's part of, if you go back in history, that's Amaco was the old company that produced it. At that time, it was within the corporation. But now as a private industry, we buy that from outside.
So if there were an industry that saw the benefit of locating in Jeff Davis County to first and foremost support Propex, would it be out of the question or not worth asking the question if y'all would be able to shift your supply to somebody that came into Jeff Davis County rather than the contract that you currently have?
It's too competitive, too much investment involved, and if you're talking about resin producing plant, they got specialty resins go to different places, but Propex has got a certain resin that they use coming out of Louisiana or
Those two specialized.
Texas, too specialized, yeah. And it's like refineries. There hasn't been too many plants built in the past 25 years. Nobody wants them in their high forward.
Just two biggie. One is C3 polymer, and it's made from ethylene and the whole gasoline industry. So it's just something you wouldn't be able to do more than likely. You may have some kind of sourcing agreement where you did something like that as far as your second, but not from a production standpoint.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why I included the NAICS code. So as the discussion moves forward on the development authority side, or the industries are interested, you guys can go on to census.gov or just type in the NAICS code, and they will give you the full definition for those. I believe they're included in the report, and if they aren't, I'll make sure that they are.
You got them actually.
But, you know, it's the kind of thing that, you know, as you read the descriptions and have questions on that, I'm more than happy to answer those going forward. Kind of after we get through that point, because it's not some of the stuff, I'll admit, is about as clear as mud. But I wanted to make sure that we had a relatively easy to follow description for everybody, and not have me prattling on about which makes it doesn't matter. On and on and on, wasting everybody's time, because I'm just continuing to talk for my sanity, which is possible, by the way. But so I guess I'll kind of conclude, and then definitely be willing to again answer any questions. That there are eight target industries that we came out of this. There are eight of these core sectors could really support or be a benefit to the area in a positive way. In addition to continuing to work to support the businesses that are here and that are already growing, and then that growing in these areas would be consistent with what is already here. It's consistent with the types of industries that have been recruited so far, and you know we think we are ready to move forward with whatever else the development authority needs. And with that, I will go ahead and conclude and continue to take questions.
So I'm just thinking more about the trucking sector. Does this take into account the businesses that run their own trucks, or is this just outsourced?
Just anything outsourced. If you run your own logistics side of it, good for lack of a better way to put it, good for you. That is a step in the process to controlling your own supply chain.
But I mean, like in this report, as you're measuring supply and demand, it's not taking into account those companies that are running their own trucks. So that number could be skewed a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because y'all run your own trucks, right?
Somewhat.
And Beasley, I know Beasley runs a lot of their own trucks, and I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I think Williams Brothers and ABF, those are the only two
Dirt movers.
outsourced. Yeah,
Dirt movers and.
because ABF,
SEC.
I've heard from them a few times, asking if there's anything new that they can actually get contracts on. And
They come by us.
yeah, I was gonna say, actually, I said I wasn't sure what you guys were doing, if Walmart was actually coming and picking up directly from you guys, or if you
They
used
are.
your own trucks,
Walmart does come pick up every day.
So I wasn't sure how that was going with you guys, but, they are looking for more business here locally.
We deliver the train 2 times a day, and then, and that's with our personal truck. Club Car brings their truck every morning from Augusta, pick up.
And that's one of my concerns with putting it in there initially, was that I knew that part of the vertical integration that happens in some of the organizations are exactly that. Our partners are shipping stuff to it, but there's no access for an independent hauler to get in there and do it. On the other hand, still felt remiss to not mention that as a possibility.
Anybody else? Any other questions or comments from our audience today?
None today.
Okay. But, everybody, I do appreciate you taking time to come today. I want y'all to understand that the partnership that, we're forming with Georgia Southern is, so far has been a great relationship. We've really got off to a good start with this. And I wanted our local industries to know that in this venture moving forward, our objective is to find ways to help you, not to compete against you. And everything that Ben has performed for us in this, nothing is, of course, 100% accurate. A lot of this is speculation, but at the same time, it's a tool that I intend to use moving forward to make sure that we do find, the right avenues to help ourselves grow, help you grow, and basically form a better relationship between ourselves and you, and that'll help attract other industries into our community as well. And Ben, thank you very much for all the work you put into this. I know you worked on it quite a while.
It was an undertaking and a half, but we certainly appreciate the work, and the time that was spent on it was valuable from what we can see from the turnout today and from the kind words we've gotten back from the Development Authority about it. So we appreciate the opportunity and look forward to working with you guys again in the future on new projects and things going forward, both on the research side and on the business side.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
You don't have anything else? That's all we got today. Anything from anyone else? Does it concern the survey for the good of Jeff Davis County? Anybody? Comments, concerns, wishes? Anything from any board members? I'll call our meeting adjourned then.
That's the way I was.
Sometimes.
Hey,
Kurt.
Good night.